So it seems like every day I have bad news for Disney. Culturians, today's going to be another day like that. They don't seem to understand how to compete with even the most basic of film concepts. The Mandalorian and Grogu has failed at such an epic rate that a micro budget horror film has displaced it in overall box office earnings, and it still continues to grow each and every day. In fact, it has big weekends. It displaced it on the charts actually in its second weekend. And of course, I'm talking about Obsession, but there are other things that are, well, outpacing Disney right now. And that's disappointing. It's kind of scary, and it's something we get to talk about. So stick around, because here we go. Now, before we get started, just a real quick reminder, I am trying to get to 50K, and with that, it takes a little bit of effort from you guys, and I appreciate the effort you've given so far. So do me the small favor of double checking you're subscribed to the channel, and if not, click that subscribe button. It'll say subscribed, and then click the bell icon and just make sure, verify that it is on all notifications, because YouTube made a recent change for all of your favorite creators where they've moved that to preferred or some other setting that they just recently decided to reset, making it more difficult to find your regular creators. And the last step, of course, is to hit the thumbs up button. But if you do those three things, it helps a great deal. If you comment, even more help. And of course, if you watch another one of my videos, either from yesterday or previous to today, anytime right after this one, it plants me in your feed so you don't have to go looking, which I would appreciate. But we need to talk about the story and how embarrassing this is for Disney. Now, this comes from Marvin Montanaro over on That Park Place. And of course, you should have that bookmarked and ready to go every day. I oftentimes write things over here, but Marvin writes that micro-budget horror film Obsession overtakes Disney's The Mandalorian and Grogu for a stunning box office upset for Star Wars. Now, it's not surprising. Star Wars wasn't going to do well. We'd predicted this going, well, many months ago. In fact, I'd talked about it, Pro talked about it, Marvin talked about it, Fake Wizard talked about it. Jonas has talked about it. There's so many people out there that you follow and pay attention to. We were all telling you this. We were also all telling you that Supergirl wasn't going to do so well, and I can't wait to review that for you for Friday. But Disney's return to theaters with Star Wars was supposed to be a victory lap, something that showed up after 7 years that, well, we just hadn't had Star Wars for a while. And the studio now finds itself looking up at a micro-budget obsession film that is worldwide off the charts, and I think over $5 to $10 million above where Mandalorian and Grogu is. Now, according to the Box Office Mojo, Obsession is now grossed $333.27 million worldwide. That's a lot of money, surpassing the Mandalorian and Grogu, which currently stands at $321.76 million. Now, we're going to check these against the numbers here in just a moment from yesterday, but you're going to see that phenomena repeat itself multiple times over. And the numbers mark a remarkable or unremarkable milestone for an independent horror phenomenon and an embarrassing one for Disney and Lucasfilm, meaning they didn't have a broad appeal with the Mandalorian and Grogu. They are about 2 to 5 years behind on the times, and that really speaks loudly, more loudly than words or anything I can say. And Obsession was put together for about $750,000. Of course, it was sold to a distributor who then turned around and made enormous amounts of profit. But the Mandalorian and Grogu carried a reported budget of roughly $166 million before marketing costs are considered. Now, there were some tax incentives in there, and we've talked about that in previous videos, but this is a product, Obsession's a product that was made for less than 1% of Disney's production budget. It has now generated more revenue worldwide than the theatrical release of Star Wars. That's right. And as I mentioned before, this is a 7-year drought of film for Lucasfilm, or successful Star Wars film, I should say, because we did have a terrible Indiana Jones movie in there. But this goes beyond the story about successful horror movies and is a referendum on the current state of Disney and the Star Wars brand, and I don't think anybody can argue with that. When Disney announced there would be a Mandalorian and Grogu project, it was widely viewed as the safest possible path back to theaters for them. And they needed a safe path because they've had a lot of failures on the Marvel side of the equation, and even back then in the Pixar area. Places you would expect Disney to do well, they started doing very poorly, and of course, Snow White didn't do very well either. So, with Din Djarin and Grogu, the breakout stars of the Disney minus era, were represented one of the few corners of Star Wars that were positively reviewed by the fan base. Of course, The Acolyte wasn't positively reviewed, or any of those other words that you want to have associated with your product. It seemed like the safest no-brainer. If any recent Lucasfilm property could bring back audiences to the theaters, this was supposed to be it. And instead of the film's theatrical run, it has become increasingly difficult to defend. And I can't and won't defend this project or this movie. It was not a good movie. It wasn't particularly well assembled. It had massive gaps of boredom in between the occasional element that added to whatever act you happened to be in. And I felt like they took a lot of shortcuts along the way when it came to developing Grogu, because they didn't even bother. There's no growth for either of these characters in the film, and the only thing that shows growth is the relationship between them and a Hutt who happens to be Jabba's son. I don't remember, nor do I care anymore. Star Wars has become something I am uninterested in, and I think the audience that they lost, which is reported to be around 85%, is done as well. That's not good. You paid $4 billion for this, and you haven't recouped $1. Audiences show up for movies they want to see, but they're not showing up for Star Wars. Hollywood executives are looking at the theatrical movie going and saying, hey, it's fundamentally changed. The success of Obsession over Star Wars suggests something completely different, that audiences are still willing to pay for and buy tickets for things they want to support. And they're still willing to turn a movie into a cultural event and then return to see it time and time again. Try to think back. When was the last time that you wanted to see a Star Wars or Marvel film again? It's been a long time, I bet. Let me know in the comments section down below. What they appear increasingly unwilling to do is automatically support legacy brands. That's speaking about the audience. Simply because those brands once dominated popular culture, which didn't translate because you abandoned the original fans and they stopped passing it down to the next generation. So word of mouth helped transform Obsession from a small horror release to a genuine box office phenomena because it was a little more complicated than just a simple horror plot. Meanwhile, Disney's reliance on franchise recognition proved insufficient to elevate The Mandalorian and Grogu to the level many expected from a theatrical Star Wars event. And look, I'm going to leave this here because I want to look at the actual numbers. This is the numbers for Obsession 2026, the first film that came out from this creator. It has earned to date, or as of yesterday, or yesterday is of this recording, 2 days ago as you're watching, $332 million. That's a lot of global money, and it's done very well. But guess what? That's going to get you jobs in the future. Do you know what won't get you jobs in the future? Star Wars. Why? Because the Mandalorian and Grogu are at $328.694 million. Now, let's go back to Obsession. Obsession, $332 million, $328 million, and of course, with the updated box office mojo numbers that I gave you a few moments ago, lots of places are reporting the same thing, that there is a massive disparity between what is good and what audiences will pay for, and of course, what Disney's putting out, which I think we can all say at this point is slop. But hey, if you disagree with me, or if you want to make another point, do so in the comments section down below. And if you have not hit the like button as of this point, please hit it now. It'll be very helpful here. And I like to have discussions in the chat, so feel free to weigh in. We'll have a conversation about whatever it is you happen to want to talk about. But as always, be sure to take care of yourself, take care of others, and if you want to defend Grogu, let me know in the comments section below. See ya.